Hello, welcome back to the Ruth MacFit Podcast. I am always happy to be here chatting to you in a different setting, actually come into the bedroom for this podcast recording because it's a little bit cooler. It's quite warm outside. It's lovely and sunny today, which makes a change because it has been raining a fair bit since we've been here. Anyway, all is well in the world. I'm having a fantastic time. I went to the running group yesterday, loved doing that. And I hope that you're having a lovely summer doing whatever it is that you're doing. I hope that you're managing to make it fun. And today's episode is actually about something I've talked about in the past. You'll hear me reference it in other podcast episodes. And I think it's important we delve into it again because it does underpin a lot of what we're doing, both inside the No Crap Cake method, but also when we're struggling with fat loss or changes at this stage of life when we're in our 40s and beyond. And to begin with, I want to ask you, or I want you to think about whether you've ever planned something that at the time it felt really doable, maybe a healthy dinner, an evening walk, a calming bedtime routine going at a set time, you know the ones, and then only to in that moment think, no, I can't do it. Or maybe not even think I can't do it. It just doesn't happen. Because if you have, then today's episode is going to be just what you need because we're going to be talking about decision fatigue. Not just that feeling of being tired, but to the point where your brain is so mentally full that you literally can't choose well anymore. I think we can probably all relate. You don't make the choice that you wanted to make or the one that matches your goals. You just default and you react, just like I was speaking about reaction in my previous podcast. And this might show up as ordering the takeaway, skipping the workout, picking wine when you said you're going to have soft drinks or water. And the point is here, it isn't because you don't care. And I actually want to start with a story from my own life from way back in 2012, at a time where I probably wasn't reflecting on what this was. This was just things that happened all the time for me. So it's winter, it's 2012. I'm in my kitchen and I'm trying to get everything ready. You've got Hector who's due at preschool, Arthur who's due at nursery, and I was going to work as a teacher. And I'm grabbing bites of the piece of toast that I'd made myself for breakfast. And I'm telling my husband at the same time how I want us to eat healthier. I think I'm gaining weight. This was a common story in our house, and that we needed to do better. And I had actually cut out of a magazine a recipe that I want to try that I had sidelined for that evening. Anyway, then I'm running out the door, worrying about being late, pushing my children and all of the things that we need into a very impractical mini. Definitely not set up for having two young children. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, roll on now to the end of the day. And I'm coming back through that door, having picked up the children from nursery and preschool, having had a challenging day at work, and I was exhausted. Crammed into the boot of that mini was now also a load of unmarked school books that I'd said to myself I was going to mark over the weekend. My voice felt strained and tired, not from shouting, I want to add here. I wasn't a shouty teacher, but I think from the constant talking and answering questions, but also just from being pretty tired. And I was walking through that door carrying a lot, not only physically, but mentally as well. And I picked up that recipe. Now, I did have intentions of making it, but I picked it up. I read the first step and it said marinate the chicken. And I thought, fuck that. And needless to say, that chicken got put back to the side. It did not get marinated. And I grabbed a pizza from the freezer. Now, could I have chosen another recipe instead of that pizza? You know, we always had tins of tuna in the house. So yeah, I likely could have cooked something with that, some veg, some pasta even, maybe a tuna pasta bake type thing, but I didn't because my brain was not interested in making healthier choices or being intentional with what I was going to do. And that is what decision fatigue looks like. And it wasn't a one-off for me. This was a pattern where I would think that I had no willpower, that I had a motivation problem, that I was lazy. And I know that a lot of women can relate to that because I have this conversation with them. You see, decision fatigue is the idea that the more decisions we make, the harder it becomes to make good ones. And it isn't just about being tired. It's about being mentally overloaded to the point where your brain just starts taking shortcuts. And when our brain is full, it doesn't reach for what's best. If only, that would be fine, wouldn't it? It's going to reach for what's easiest, what we've practiced most. You know, think of those old coping mechanisms that maybe served us at some point but aren't helpful anymore. The things we've associated with, oh, I'm feeling stressed, I'm going to grab chocolate. But there was someone that was really aware of decision fatigue and worked with this quite well. And actually, that was Barack Obama. He wore the same coloured suit every day while in office. And it wasn't because he lacked any imagination or style. It was because he wanted to avoid wasting mental energy on trivial decisions. He didn't want to think about what he was going to be eating, what he was going to be wearing, because he had too many other decisions to make. And for him, those other decisions were pretty important and he needed a clearer mind. And that is the level of strategy that we need when it comes to our own lives. We might not be running for office, but we have got a lot going on in our mind. And if we're constantly choosing between chicken, eggs, pizza, toast, I think it's important to remember that we're not just deciding what to eat, we're also making decisions about whether we've got the ingredients, wondering if we need to go to the shop, thinking about how long it's going to take to make it, weighing up whether our children will actually eat it, and then also considering the amount of time or energy that we have for cooking and cleaning up. Now, these were things that hadn't gone through my head before I cut out a picture of that recipe. So it isn't just one decision, is it? It's a whole web of decisions. And when our brain is tired, it just wants out. And that's where defaults and systems can come in. I would say that in our 40s and beyond, that we're making a huge amount of decisions each day. And we tend to be the default decision maker in our house, don't we? You know, anything with the children, with our meals, our partners, anything that needs doing at home, maybe elderly parents too. And I've actually got a bit of a funny story about this because this podcast was on my mind and something happened recently that made me think about all of those other little decisions and mental load that we're carrying around with us. We were heading out for a run when we were here and we were meeting some friends to do this. It was at night, so I knew that we needed head torches, but I thought my husband's probably not thought about that. So I picked up a head torch for me and a head torch for him. And I handed him his head torch and I said, "Here's your head torch, you're going to need this tonight." And he put it on his head and he turned it on. And I was like, "No, we've got to drive there. So you don't want to have it on now, but we do need to take it." Anyway, we got there, we're in the car. He reached over and picked up my head torch. I was like, whoa, what are you doing? Where's yours? And he said, "I thought you bought it." I was like, "What? I gave it to you. You had it on your head." And then anyway, we were telling our friends this and they were like, "But that's your job, Ruth. You need to bring the head torch. You need to remember these things. You know that he's not going to remember that." And I thought that, yes, we're joking. And obviously I don't mind and it's fine. He had to run without a head torch. I was not giving him mine. So he just had to make sure he was close to someone. But we somehow have taken on that role, haven't we, of making sure that everyone's got everything. And actually I went on to chat to my husband about this a little bit more. Because how does that happen? You know, he said that if I hadn't been going and he'd had to think about it all himself, he would have. So have we created a rod for our own back where we're having to remember extra decisions? I think there is a thing about this. I think I saw it with generosity, but I think it counts with most things. And what I heard is like, do it once and you elicit appreciation. Do it twice and you create that anticipation. 3 times, there becomes an expectation with that. And then 4 times entitlement, 5 times dependency. And I think that's worth remembering. You know, the more that we're giving or doing or helping others, we might feel really great to begin with because they're so appreciative of it. But the more we do it, the more it becomes expected. And have we created that expectation ourselves? It's not quite on topic, but I think it's definitely one that's worth thinking about. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is that we're carrying physical and emotional loads that a lot of people can't even see. So then when it does come to making a nutrient-dense meal or choosing the workout that we've planned to do or saying no to wine or snacks, we've got nothing left in the tank. That mental exhaustion then translates into opening that fridge door, looking in it, and then going, "Oh, sod it, let's just get takeaway tonight." Or skipping the workout because you're too tired and you spend the whole time just scrolling through YouTube trying to find the right one for you, and then you just don't have time anymore. I wonder how many can relate to that. Or it could be the lying in bed and scrolling when you know that you should be going to sleep, or defaulting to snacks because the thought of cooking something just feels like too much. And I think at this point, one of the hardest things is how we talk to ourselves about what we're doing. We think we're failing, that we have no willpower, that it's just too hard for us to achieve our goals and how it must be easier for everyone else. And it might be easier for some people. I think that's worth acknowledging. But I am all about looking at what we can do and making it feel easier for us. So let's talk now about habit loops. You may have heard me chat about them before, and they are a concept from behavioural science where you have a cue, and the cue might be that you feel overwhelmed and tired. Then you have the routine, the thing you do when you feel that cue. You head straight to the snack cupboard or grab a glass of wine, whatever it is. And then you get that reward, which is a moment of calm, of comfort, or distraction. And even if that reward comes with regret later, our brain has already registered it as effective in that moment. So the next time you're feeling stressed or overloaded, your brain is saying, haha, I got you. I know exactly what we can do here. And this is where decision fatigue meets learned behavior. The more tired we are, the more likely our brain is going to be to run those old scripts. And a really useful way or helpful way of understanding this comes from a book that I read called The Chimp Paradox, which is a book by Dr. Steve Peters, in case you want to read it. And in this book, he explains how our brain is made up of three key parts: the human, who's your logical thinker, the chimp, who's emotional and reactive, and then the computer. And that's the habits and autopilot programs that we run. And when we're rested and we're calm, our human is in control. We can think rationally and make aligned decisions. But when we're tired or overwhelmed, then the chimp is going to take over. And it reacts quickly, emotionally, often without thinking. And the computer, the autopilot, runs what's familiar. And if what's familiar is grabbing wine or skipping a workout or defaulting to pizza, then that is what we're going to do when the chimp is driving. Now, I want to make it clear here, our job is not to fight the chimp or beat the chimp up for the bad decisions it's making. We need to update the computer instead and to build those better defaults that can kick in when the human is offline, because there will be times that the human is going to be offline, especially at this time of life. But before we jump into practical solutions here, I want to talk about sleep, because no amount of planning or prepping will fully help if you're constantly running on empty, if you're not getting a sleep. When you're sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that is responsible for making decisions and rational thinking, it's not going to function as well. Meanwhile, that emotional reactive part of our brain is going to become more active. Think the chimp here. And that means that we're more impulsive. You crave high calorie, high reward foods. You're less able to think long term. And there was actually a study that found that sleep-deprived people consumed significantly more calories the next day and were less likely to resist temptations. And it wasn't because they didn't want to stick to their goals, but because their brain literally couldn't recognize decisions the same way. And it's worth remembering that sleep isn't just about restoring our body, it's helping our mental capacity too. It's like clearing the tabs on a browser so that you can think clearly again. And it's worth, when you're reflecting about what's making things harder, to think about how your sleep is and if there's anything you can do to improve this. So if we're thinking about the solution to decision fatigue, it's not going to be about trying harder and giving ourselves more to do. It's going to be about deciding less. So we want to recognize our cues, right? We want to think about when we tend to go off track. Is there a certain time of the day? Are we feeling in a certain mood? Is sleep an issue? Is there a location that we're in that seems to set us off? I'll often say that one of the things that my most successful clients have in common is that they can be introspective. They're able to spot patterns, they know their cues, and even just knowing them helps them course correct in the future. So they might not make the choice that is optimal immediately, but they're more aware of it. And then we can help break the loop by inserting a pause in whatever way we can. Even a short break or a breath can reduce those impulsive choices that we're making. It's just giving our brain a second to switch off the autopilot. There's a term used called surf the edge, and 90 seconds is actually often enough. It's typically how long it takes for most emotional or physiological cravings to peak and then begin to subside if you don't act on them. So the goal isn't stopping the urge, it's noticing it. You're riding a wave here. You're giving it space. You're observing what it feels like without judging or reacting. And then after the 90 seconds, your logical brain is more likely to engage. You might still choose to do what it was you were going to do before, but you're doing it as a choice and not a reaction, and that makes a big difference. Then you can try putting something else in that pause, trying something else first. And it's not about I'm not allowed to have that, but let me try this first. It could be where you'd normally have a reaction of I need some chocolate to actually, I'm going to do 10 squats before I have that chocolate. And then after you've done those 10 squats, you think, do I still want the chocolate? It could be that you're going to go, actually, I'm going to have a cup of tea first. I'm going to sit down. And then after my cup of tea, think about whether I still want that chocolate. And the nice thing about putting in something else to help break that loop, whether or not you end up going on to do what it was that you were initially reacting to do, is that over time, if you stop doing the next step, it might be that you start associating, for example, that movement of that 10 squats or that cup of tea with feeling better rather than the chocolate or the wine that perhaps you'd normally reach for. I find it really hard to imagine, but I used to keep everything in my head, every appointment, every job that needed doing. If I decided I wanted to stick to a certain number of calories, then I'd just track that day and would decide what I was going to eat as I went along, even when I was hungry. And actually, I was thinking about this, and I think this is why people will often think that they need a meal plan, as they want others to do the thinking for them. They don't have time to think about foods, etc. And that is an upside of a meal plan, but the downside is that if you haven't chosen the food that you like, that you want to eat, then you're just following someone else's plan until you lose weight, and then it becomes unsustainable. And I think when we're doing it this way, we can end up trying to cook different things all the time. We're constantly learning new recipes, and it actually becomes more complicated. So instead, we focus on having those systems instead of relying on motivation to get us through our day. And as I spoke about in my last podcast, we focus on making choices instead of reactions. It really does feel so much better. You see, the systems are going to give us the structure when we're tired. So it might be that we're planning our food shop in advance and we're using a similar list each week because we've got a go-to list of meals that could be made in a rush, and our staple shopping list works around those. Or it might be that you have a set evening routine, nothing complicated, easy to manage, but something we can commit to even when we're feeling super busy. It could just be that you're thinking ahead to tomorrow and doing one thing to make the morning easier. This has actually been one of our weekly challenges in our No Crap Summer Challenge, to ask ourselves that one question each evening. What is one small thing I can do now to make tomorrow morning easier? And that might be the time that we go to bed. It might be getting some bits ready for our breakfast and lunch, or planning our breakfast and lunch. It's thinking about what might make you stumble and then having a plan before it happens. And unlike me with my plan to make that meal at the beginning, we need to be realistic. Have you got everything you need? Is it easy? Can you start anything in advance? Make it so that it's the very easiest option for you. And you can also use visual cues, like if you want to drink more water, have a water bottle on your desk, or have it ready the night before by the kettle so you drink that water first. Or perhaps you want to set up a little reminder on your computer that comes up at certain times. You can also schedule your workouts in your calendar like a meeting. It's so easy for us to put off things that are for ourselves, but if we treat them like appointments that we don't want to miss, then it's much harder to put them off. And I do think that we need to make sure that we are reminding ourselves that when we take this time for ourselves, we actually show up better for everyone else anyway. And by creating these little systems, we're not relying on motivation. We start relying on those systems. And this is definitely behind what we do in the No Crap Cake method. It's just giving us that time to pause, to reflect, to plan ahead, to filter out the crap that's not serving us. It's because I think at this stage of life, we often have very full brains, and then just piling on more to achieve fat loss is going to have us feeling pretty crap. So we look at how we can make things easier. We have those simple defaults. We make less decisions on food when we're hungry. We have routines that mean we can adapt and adjust without giving up. And we focus on daily actions and being consistent over time, not beating ourselves up that we can't be perfect. And sometimes that fullness in our brain is down to the pressure that we put on ourselves, the feeling that we have to do all of these things, but no one is dragging you to your workouts or telling you that you have to eat that certain breakfast. You will have a reason for choosing these things, and it's likely because you want to feel more like yourself again, or so you have more energy, you feel stronger, as well as perhaps losing body fat. And fat loss, I want to add again here, is easier when we feel calmer. So it always comes down to what can we do to make things easier so that we feel calmer. So you could try one or two of these things now. You could prep breakfast the night before, or even just plan it, making sure you know what you're going to have. I actually like to make overnight oats on a Sunday. I make 4 days in advance, just so I don't have to think about that breakfast in advance. It doesn't take me very long, like 5 minutes. I've actually got a podcast episode on prepping for those who don't really want to prep, which I will link in the show notes, because I also then prep a little bit of protein. Again, it doesn't take me very long, but it means I can add it to so many different things during the week and make my life easier. Then we have our minimum non-negotiables, the things that we can do even when life feels really busy. This is our fallback plan. So it might be that you go for a 10-minute walk, or drink 2 litres of water, or have a high protein breakfast every day. It's just thinking about what we can manage even when life is very, very busy. It's just helping us rewire that computer part of our brain. And again, it's being realistic here, making sure that we're not thinking about the ideal day, but the busy day, and starting small, right? And you might be somebody that would benefit from actually getting your clothes and your lunch ready the day before. It might be that you're putting your gym kit on the chair, you're prepping your lunchbox, you're writing down your dinner in a notebook. It's anything that is going to make that day feel calmer. I tend to actually put my gym kit on in the morning, but I know that not everyone has the luxury of doing this, but I find getting changed again before a workout is effort that I don't need to make. And then instead of keeping everything in your head, can you write everything down on a piece of paper, a bit like a brain dump? Because doing one of these before bed is going to help you sleep better and wake up with a clearer plan. You can use paper, you can use a notes app, you can use whatever works for you. My journal prompts are what help me with this, and I include just a few questions, but I always make sure that I'm answering the first 2. So I do 3 wins for today, the things that went well today, and I only put in the positive here. And then I write down 3 wins for tomorrow. So I'm planning ahead, thinking what will make tomorrow feel great. And then I have my extra boxes that I fill in when I've got energy and time. And that's I'm grateful for because, and is there anything else? So an opportunity to just get anything else out my head. So if you are someone who's telling yourself again and again, I don't know why I keep doing this, or, I was meant to work out, but I just didn't, or I was going to eat better and I ordered that pizza again, I want you to know that you're not failing. You don't lack motivation or willpower. You just have a very full brain. And when we start to reduce the thinking, then we reduce the pressure too. You make calmer choices. You feel more in control and you actually start to enjoy the process. And this really does come down to taking a little time to stop, to look at what's coming up, to think about what has made things harder, and to have a very simple plan. So here's to making life easier. And if you have a fat loss goal, then perhaps you could approach it like one of my lovely clients, Kate, who every check-in writes that she wants to lose weight in a calm way. You know, she's been super busy, but has her minimums nailed down so that she can keep going. And she's making fantastic progress. So just one more time for those at the back, if you are struggling to make those decisions or you're feeling mentally overloaded, it isn't a motivation problem. You have decision fatigue and there are things that you can do to make it easier. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. So if this episode has resonated with you, then as always, I would love it if you could leave a comment and let me know. If you could subscribe and share with those around you. It has been an absolute pleasure. And if you've got any questions at all, you can find me on Instagram at Ruth MacFit. I love chatting about any of these things. And you can also find out more about the No Crap Cake method and the membership levels available by heading to www.ruthmacfit.com. Thank you so much. Until next time, goodbye.